Good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited to be here. I have not done a podcast or a video in quite some time due to all sorts of craziness going on in my life. But I am highly delighted to have Mel Burnt with me today, who is out in BC, who was the original co-founder with me for Rebels Compass and then created a whole new life for herself out in BC. So Mel's been back on a couple of times with me, and I am always thrilled to have Mel here because she and I have some usually very, very deep and profound conversations. And I don't think that's going to be any different today. So, hey, Mel, how are you doing?
I'm well. I'm so happy that you have me back again, Karen. It's always such a pleasure to have our conversations and to, there's just so much medicine I find in our conversations, and so much perspective that's offered on both sides, and I just love being in space with you. So
me too.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you, because it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, Mel. And you know, to be able to have the conversations that you and I do. In the past, we've touched on subjects that are very directed around women, and today's no different.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's really been coming up a lot for me, particularly in these last 3 years. Well, actually, since I've moved out here, 2020 was a huge year for obviously many of us. But in terms of my own healing journey, it was really revolved around the mother and around women, around my own birth, the birthing of my own children, and just this journey of healing into my sovereign nature and what that means and what that looks like and what that means for all women, especially at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me too, because it's probably around about late 2018, 2019 that I started diving deeper and deeper into the coaching, the emotions coaching. And through that, you've heard me say it, I've said it many times on podcasts and things like that, that I hit something inside of me that was so deep, I didn't even know it was in there. And that was, I never wanted another woman to feel like she had to beg to be loved and accept the small morsels that's given to her and think that that's okay. And that has been the driving force for me, and what lights me up and makes me feel as though I'm making a difference, not only in my own life, but in other women's lives. When you can break down all of those structures that we have been taught generationally that keep us pigeonholed and keep us in a good little wife or a good little daughter or a good little this or the other, that we have held, we've been suppressed and held down within our own vibrational energy for a very, very long time. And I know that the message that you have, and this has got zero to do with women's lib or anything like this. This is about claiming your sovereign power of who you are, which is totally different. It's not labeled and directed from an outside body. It's something that comes from deep within you, that is a force that has to come out.
Absolutely. And for me, it is, it's deeply rooted in the feminine, which is all about our physical body, right? It's about feeling whole in our physicality and in our in the wholeness of being human. And I feel that obviously we as women, we all humans carry the male and female, or masculine and feminine energy. And we live in a culture that's really masculine dominant and is always asking of us to step into the masculine part of our being. And we forget, particularly as women, we've forgotten how to be the feminine part, the soft, the gentle, and yet can be the fierce and the aspects of ourselves that allows for rest and for flowing with the natural cycles and seasons of life. And to me, this has been a huge part of my journey, specifically for these, like I said, these last few years, and really has opened me up to this reclamation of womb wisdom, this reclamation of our sacred bodies being able to birth, to sustain, and to destroy. And really, this is the cycle of Mother Nature, right? She works in the seasons through pregnancy and birth and regeneration and death. And so I think that it's so important as women that we remember and reclaim those aspects of ourselves. And we can do that through our physical body, through menstruation, through menopause or menopause. We can do that from honoring our body and our need for rest and for nourishment and nurturance, and that we aren't made to be go, go, go all the time. We're meant to honor those cycles and phases of creation and rest and expansion and involution and all of those things. And it's really been the focus of my last few years in a shamanic way. Mm-hmm. And so and it's really just been more apparent to me in these last few months of well, actually not a few months, I would say, yeah, the last few months of what I've been awoken to in terms of what's going on outside in the bigger picture, and that it's even more important now to come back to ourselves as women and reclaim the wholeness of what a woman is.
I completely agree with you. And, this is something that very often it's not until you get into your maybe 40s and 50s or some later 60s and 70s that all of a sudden something hits and changes. There's a life change somewhere that happens and you go, wait, wow, boom. And you start to reconnect to that feminine side because it's never taught to us. I mean, I remember I've had discussions like this with other women where when it comes to your menstrual cycle, for me, that was something that I was never ever told about. It was something that happened to me, that I started a period, and all of a sudden now I'm thinking there's something wrong with me because nobody ever discussed it with me, and hid it for 2 or 3 months before my grandmother found out and then shared it with my mom. So even coming down to our children, and the discussion of what it is to be feminine. And like you said, we spend so long trying to be like men or trying to fit into a man's world and to claim external power and what it means to have that external power and be recognized, that it goes that we forget that internal power and what it actually means to be feminine and to, like you say, we're the only creators of life. We are the only ones that can carry a baby for 9 months and give birth to new life. Yes, we need men to do that, but we are the only ones that can cradle that. And it's even going into the depth of all of that too.
That's right. And then as you're speaking, Karen, like I can't help, I've been rereading several times a book called Womb Awakening. And it really talks about how the feminine path, or how shamanism is actually rooted in feminine wisdom. Each time we have a menstrual cycle, or each time we have a birth or pregnancy, is a state of initiation. And like in Inanna's descent, we're involved, or Inanna's descent, we're invited to descend into the womb of Mother Earth to access our unconscious, our wounds, our limiting beliefs, our ancestral wounding, our lineage wounding, and to heal it and reemerge into our womb body as a rebirth into a new aspect of our being. And so it's really been interesting for me that this whole concept of shamanism being male dominated, when in truth, like many things, it actually began as a feminine, it was a feminine way of life. It was a feminine, it was the way of the feminine. And that, there's one more thing I wanted to add there, but it's escaped me. And I think too, talking about, your own journey in the beginning and how that started for you into opening up into that feminine aspect, is also begins, to me, what came and is what I reminded of was that it all starts with our abandonment or taken away from our mom. It all begins from the moment we're removed from our mother, and we spend our entire lives, all of us, all humans, trying to return back to our mother, trying to return back to that space of nourishment, of source, of wholeness. And that, all those wounds around abandonment, being taken away from our mom. I know that's been my own experience as I was birthed, and really how that has impacted my journey as myself, as Melanie, and the wounding that came with that in terms of my own womb issues, in terms of my own menstrual issues, of my my relationships with myself and with others. And so I just love that, remembering that we spend our lives always trying to return back to our mother, and that mother is also our great Mother Earth, and which is like the quality or the purpose of the feminine way, right? Is returning back to earth, back to the source of where we came from, and where we will return when we die. We will return back into the womb of Mother Earth, to return to the cosmic womb of Mama, into the galaxies, to have our souls rebirthed once again.
And it's through this journey that we rediscover who we are and claim that. I know you talking about that, and me coming from a different side of doing the emotions coaching and one thing and another. One of the first things that I share with people is when we're born, the first 2 years of our life feel like unconditional love. We're fed when we wanted, we're cuddled when we want. For most people, it isn't that for everybody, but we have that level of nurturing and caring and being fed and swaddled and being in that place of safety. And then from 2 years on, it's all about conditional. You're conditionally loved. If you're a good girl or a good boy, you'll get this. If you behave or you perform this way, then this will happen. So it all becomes then external, and we spend our entire life also searching for that feeling of unconditional love, but we're taught that everything's conditional. So we're searching for something, like you said, that was the original feeling of being that nurtured and mothered and cared for, and that womb experience, but we're actually taught that everything else is conditional after that.
Yeah, that's so true. And as you're speaking, I can't help but think of as being a mother, and being that for my own children, and really how our conditioning and our wounding and all of these ideas of beliefs have told of what we've been told as children, moves forward into our parenting as we've been parented, and how we need to break those cycles and really, again, return to the way of the feminine, which is really about honoring the rhythm and cycles of our children, of their individuality, and the important need for belonging and community, which is foundational for women. Like women, I mean, we all need community, but women in circle has always been a thing needed. It's raising a child on your own versus it takes a village to raise a child. And so I think that there's been a lot to be said when that's not happening, and we're taking on roles as mothers, as well as having to take on a role as like a career and all of these other pieces that's been informed on our culture and on our ways of parenting. And I know for me, taking child and youth work diploma at Algonquin years ago, when they were still babes, was really a huge information, a huge awakening to parenting for me. And it just allowed me to remember my conditionings, and to move forward from that. And I think too that that's just so important for women to be together in community, and to know that we can hold each other and nurture and nourish each other through all the various roles that we hold, particularly when it comes to our children.
Absolutely. But when I look at the amount of women I have known and had in my life, we are conditioned, like you say, right from birth. We're conditioned from a very, very early age. And sometimes it takes a long time to break out of that conditioning. We're actually generationally told, be demure, be ladylike, but speak your truth. But while you're speaking your truth, don't hurt anybody. Be seen and not heard. So be quiet in the corner. Don't speak until spoken to. Always dress in a certain manner so as not to draw too much attention to you. So way back, you know, if women were ever raped, it was always their fault because they dressed provocatively. If you had a child that was more outspoken and loud, you know, they were constantly scolded, sit down, be quiet, don't speak up, don't do this. You know, so we as women very often get those mixed messages, you know, to stay small but speak up. Speak your truth but don't hurt anybody. Be who you are but don't be who you are too much because you might stand out. Be all of these things that you want to be, but you know, do it behind closed doors and don't put yourself out there too much and don't be too outspoken and don't be this and don't be this. So we have these conflicting messages going off inside of us all the time. And then it's like, okay, where do I fit? Like you say, I am head cook and bottle washer at home. I'm nanny to my children and I'm a caregiver to my children, and I hold a position in a company, or I have a part-time job, or I come home and I have to cook and clean and I have to do this, and we're spinning 45 plates all of the time, trying to feel like we are accomplished and fit into a society that was created for us mostly by men.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with that, and that may be
absolutely, and it's still happening. Like,
yeah.
I think of even my daughters, it's I don't know if it's just because it's Nelson a little bit different here, but even when Emma was in high school, like the girls weren't allowed to wear tank tops because what, teenage boys can't handle themselves. Yeah. And so there's just like this expectation of that, you know, women are the ones that need to accommodate men, and I find that that's so relevant. And even for instance, I facilitated a coming of age ceremony for 12 girls in our community last year, and it was such a beautiful such a beautiful offering. And originally it was, you know, the program was based around, you know, teaching them about consent, teaching them to say no, teaching them about healthy boundaries, teaching them about all these things that like that everybody should be learning, not just the girls. And you know, instead I chose to turn it more into the feminine, because I know the schools would be teaching those things, and really emphasize the importance of intuition, the importance of using your voice for yourself and for the collective and for all of women, the importance of community and relationship with females, with the female in with females in your life, the importance of your moon time and your cycles with nature, and honoring your times for rest, honoring that your moon time is actually a place of like of healing and wisdom and power. And so it was so received, like it was received so well, particularly by the girls, but the mothers were just so happy, because we live in a culture where our teenagers believe or feel that they can't be comfortable enough to go talk to the parents or their mom, and the moms don't feel comfortable enough to share that because it's been so repressed within ourselves as women growing up, that yes, we had to hide our moon time, and yes, it's an inconvenience, and yes, how are all the ways that we can hide it and diminish it, but still make sure that you're being active when you're actually in a time where you're supposed to be resting and regenerating. And for me, that is just so important. And particularly like in these last 3 years, I've had such I've had adrenal fatigue shutdown, I've had HPA axis, I've had all of these things, and really the main teachings or the main medicines that I've been getting out of that is really about honoring my body, honoring my cycles, honoring that there are times where I'm going to have energy, that I'm going to want to create, that I want to be able to give, and then there are times where I need to rest, where I need to regenerate, where I need to get away from people and have time by myself. And honoring that I move in the way like the moon. I'm not always blossoming and blooming and able to give. That there are actually most of my times I'm in a place of this constant shift and moving. Yeah. And I think that, you know, that's so important, and that our girls growing up don't know that either, right? We're still immersed very much into this culture of doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and again, like expecting that because you're female, you're a girl, you're obligated to make sure that you're accommodating the male population in whatever way that is. And for teenagers, how you dress, how you, like you said, how you speak, how you show up, how, you know, you can't even be fully comfortable in your body or love your body in a way that you want to honor it, because you could be putting yourself at risk.
Yeah. And like you say, you don't get the opportunity to express yourself or to even use your voice. And if you do use your voice, now you're being a bitch. If you do use your voice, you know, now you're being aggressive. If you do say no, then, you know, there's something wrong with you. And I know that you are creating something amazing out in BC that we're going to talk about again. But it's also bring that awareness to women, and particularly where I talk to with women is my message that I received from my own internal guidance was to become wholeheartedly you. When you become wholeheartedly you, you claim back who you are. You honor that voice within you. You honor that energy about you. You chills going through me. Sorry. You reclaim that truth of who you are, and it's okay to express yourself in the way you want to express yourself, and not to feel that you always have to be small and accommodate and be that little demure girl that sits in the corner. And, you know, I remember conversations with my parents, you know, even when my first marriage was going sideways, it's, well, you know what, Karen, you made your bed, you're going to have to lie in it. You just put up with it. You know, and so many women are told that. So many women are told, be grateful that you've got a roof over your head. Be grateful that there's food on the table. Be grateful that somebody is there for you, regardless of the fact if you are treated poorly. So having all of this wisdom, having all of this truth, having all of this knowledge that has slowly been chipped away at from various areas of our culture and is rapidly disappearing, where women are seen as that sacred being. You know, it's being able to get these teachings back out and being able to honor that part of femininity that is slowly eroding.
Yes, and I feel that we're in a time right now where it's, you know, there's this whole idea of like the oppression of women, and that I was having this conversation in terms of the Women's Center, and just that, you know, that women again have had to push their needs aside, and even though they're not having their needs met, and invite in and be inclusive of everybody at the expense of being excluded and not having their needs met. And for me, it's just so important that we do our own work, and so important that for myself, I've realized is that it's so important for me to do my own work, to know that it all begins with me, it ends with me, and that if I can remember the truth of who I am, that we are all love, and that I can tend to my own wounds and find myself as a sovereign woman, whole as I am in all the ways, you know, our shadows, our light, and all of those pieces, and honor that all aspects of being a woman, that's really all I can do. And sometimes it's difficult and challenging, especially as I think of the future. But I try and stay present, and I try to remember that it begins with me. And if I'm creating change within me, I'm creating that change within my family, within my community. And it's just so important for me, I think, that we need a community of women, that we need our circle of women. And, you know, that those circles can be different. You know, there can be parts of circles where you're connected for one reason, or ones that you're connected for another, but really remembering the importance of having healthy relationships with women. And I think that is something that for my own personal journey has been a struggle, is finding healthy relationships with women and maintaining them, because my very first relationship was with my mom, and that was taken away and never really happened. And so if I can come back into myself as wholeness and reclaim my own wounds and reclaim myself as a woman, then I'm also allowing other women to do the same, right? I'm inviting other women to do the same. I'm standing in sovereignty as this is what is possible for myself, for my children, for their children, and for women as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah, I identify. So my mom has become my greatest teacher. She was the one who was the most difficult relationship for me as a child, because my mom was emotionally unavailable. Because my mom was emotionally unavailable, she was the one I poured my most energy into, trying to make her emotionally available. But what her teaching has given me is that the only one I can really be emotionally available for, first of all, is myself. If I suppress and bury my own emotions, if I hide who I am, if I suppress my voice, if I don't show up for me, then why would I expect anybody else to show up for me? And so she has been a great teacher for me in that regard. And for as much, for one side, when I was a teenager and I used to really call names and, be upset and, very frustrated and angry and disappointed. Now I'm on the complete opposite side, where I have that level of love and compassion for my mom and her journey and her struggles, that she inadvertently, or chosen, whichever way you want to look at it, gifted me the ability to be able to look inside of myself and create for myself what I was looking for in someone else, which is where that wholeheartedly you comes into. If you're always expecting somebody else to fulfill that need, you're always going to be expecting somebody to fulfill that need. But when you can fulfill that need within you, then all needs are met.
Absolutely. And then you're giving from a place of fullness, and nobody can take that away. No relationship can take that away. And so then it's also an invitation for those who are in relationship with you to honor you, because that you're sovereign and whole in yourself and you require nothing. And so those people, and it's an invitation for your partners, your relationships, to also do the same and to welcome the wholeness of who you are. And so, which is so important, because, particularly if we've got our own woundings, and those are reflected in our children, and our children are getting into unhealthy relationships. I mean, the cycle just continues. And you're talking about your mom and the gift that she gave you, and that wholehearted knowing of who you are and stepping into that truth. And for me, while I have been experiencing these last 3 years, I really had this healing with my mom come full circle. And it was really a tribute to my inner child, when she was able to apologize to me and tell me that she should have been there for me, and that, in all these ways of what my child needed to hear, inner child needed to hear at the time, she was bringing that forth as I was coming to the completion of my own healing and forgiveness, and helping to heal the wounds that had been living within me or existing within me. And so, and interestingly enough, she's going through her own cycle of healing her wounding around her mom. And it's really a whole journey. We actually started together on that journey. It was a moment of, like, my nanny was in crisis, her mom, I went to see her. It just kind of was this domino effect. My mom ended up coming out, having to take care of her, ended up bringing her back to Nova Scotia to live with her. And so it was just this cycle of as to me, it just reminds me of the overlap, as I'm healing and stepping into the healing of my mom, she's coming in through that healing and healing her mom, which, obviously comes back to the healing of myself and my children and the children to come. And so it really is, to me, such needed medicine at this time. And it's so needed for each of us as women to be sovereign, to step in the wholeheartedness who we are and share the gifts and wisdom that we are. And that is, you know, obviously we are all love. Every human being is love. And stepping into our individual way of our expression of that love.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, a lot of that is breaking down the program of how we were taught to separate ourselves, to judge others, and to have this illusionary measure that we always feel like we're falling short. You know, when we're taught that as children, you know, we're taught, you know, why can't you be like them, or why can't you do this, or what's wrong with you, or your brother or your sister doesn't do this. So we set up this program of comparison and measure, and an illusion of what perfection looks like, and judgment that actually takes us completely out of our sovereign self and becomes an external, outside mechanism that we're continually judging and trying to find our way back to wholeness, but from the outside. But it's all an inside job. You know, that every time somebody talks about that inner thing, it's like I hear the Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror, you know, and it's man or woman in the mirror. When you look in the mirror and reflect back to you who you are, all healing starts with you. And when you can let go of those comparisons and those judgments and the expectations and everything else, you're on a fast track journey to becoming wholeheartedly you and not needing another person to fill you up. You fill yourself up.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I love shamanism and the shadow work so much, because it really is an invitation for us to dive into all aspects of our being. The pieces that we've been told have been taboo, the pieces of us that have been told are not accepted, that have been rejected and abandoned, and to really embrace it as all part of our humanity. It's all part of being whole, is welcoming all aspects of our being. And when we can see those aspects within ourselves and can acknowledge them and can embrace them with compassion, then it's so much easier for us to carry that forward in our relationships, and to be able to welcome and accept that nobody is perfect, and that we all carry our wounds, and that we all carry aspects of ourselves that we've not allowed to have been welcomed, and in all ways. And again, that's the feminine. That's the feminine, welcoming everything and anything. And you know, the wholeness of being a human being is recognizing that we contain the dark and the light.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it's interesting because growing up, I never felt, I can't say that I really remember. I mean, I remember being told like, you should be more like this person, or you shouldn't be doing this, and all of these pieces. But to me, I never felt that they were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe because in the bigger scheme, I was living in a house, obviously, of abuse, and we're seeing all of the taboo and all of the things that were wrong, and accepted them because as a child, that's all you can really do, right? Or that's what you can do. And that's right. And so when all of these little things are told they're taboo, to me, there's like the bigger picture of like, well, I've seen it all. So, yeah, you know, it's like, it's an aspect of being human. And I think that's been a huge journey in my ability to forgive, you know, my parents, is recognizing that they are human, and that these were just wide open aspects of their wounding, and of our taboos, and of our cultural conditioning.
Yeah.
And it's allowed me to find acceptance and to find compassion for the humanness of who they are. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah. You were talking earlier on about women being in circle, or even being more accepting. And, you know, there is a way to hold your energy within you, to know who you are and speak out and speak up and still be accepting. You know, you can still accept things into your life, but still be vocal about it. You can still recognize somebody else's journey and the struggles and everything that they're having, and what needs to happen for them to feel like they're whole. And still have a voice and honor yourself. It's not necessarily one or the other. You can do both.
And as you say that, using our voice, what came for me was really about expressing our needs as women, and particularly to our partners or in our relationships. And I know this has been something relatively new for me, probably in the last, I guess it's been like 5 or 6 years, where I've really got to a point in my healing journey where I actually had to verbalize my needs, because prior to that, I don't want to start conflict. Maybe I'm being selfish. I can understand where that person's coming from, and that makes sense to me, at the expense of realizing that I'm actually abandoning myself every time I'm accepting. Right. Because I can accept and understand that person's side. I can understand and accept that this person is doing this thing, but I was not expressing it or still allowing myself to have my truth of what it was, and I was abandoning myself at the expense of it. And so when it came to a time where I actually had to, or felt ready to express my needs, it was like a huge shift in my relationship, to the point that it created a lot of tension and chaos. But it was, no, these are my needs, and if you can't meet them, I don't love you less, but I know I love myself enough. I'm sovereign and whole in myself enough.
Yeah.
In myself to know that this is what I need in a relationship. And if you can't bring it, then something needs to change. And so over the last couple of years, it's really been obviously a little bit more fluid, because I've done it enough times. But there are still moments where I have those moments of fear, those moments of, am I going to be rejected? Those moments of like, does this mean everything's going to change? Am I being a bitch? So all of those things coming up and really having to work through, like, no, me telling somebody what I need doesn't mean they have to meet them, but I am entitled to saying, this is what I need. And if you can't give it to me or meet that, then that's fine. Yeah. And so, which I think is so important for women, because particularly as mothers, we have all of these roles, we have all of these things we're supposed to fulfill, and there's no time for our needs. And so when is there time to even acknowledge we have needs, let alone express them? And I think, in a lot of relationships that I'm seeing in women, particularly around my age and older, is that there's this huge conflict in women not being able to express what they need.
Because we are taught that we are born to serve. We are taught that we're born to be mothers. We're taught that we're born to be wives. We're taught that we are there to serve our men. We are taught that we need to be head cook and bottle washer. We are taught all of that because it's all generational. We were also taught, like I said before, be quiet, be small, don't be seen, etc., etc. So when you finally start to get to that point where you go, wait a minute, I don't want to be touched this way, or wait a minute, I don't like the way you speak to me like that, or wait a minute, we need to share this role. I mean, one of the biggest things that ticks me off is when I hear somebody say to a mom, oh, you're so lucky, your husband's babysitting. No, he's not. He equally made the babies. He equally made the babies. He needs to equally share the role. That ticks me off so much. But before I would have never have said anything, because I was taught, don't go. I was taught through my lineage of being a woman to sacrifice yourself for the needs of others. And when you get to that point where you go, actually, I have needs too, and I have a voice. I remember, I don't know if you remember, but
I do.
My throat would close, the tension that you talk of, that ever-changing landscape of, I just opened my mouth and said something, and oh my God, what's going to happen, and that fear of everything could change. But to me, now for me to sacrifice me in a way where I don't feel whole is one of those non-negotiable boundaries. And creating those boundaries for you is the starting place for you finding a voice and reclaiming what you are willing and not willing to do within yourself and within your family and within your relationships. Because very often as women that never had a voice, we have all these feelings and all of these emotions, and we have expectations, but we're afraid to ask. And then we're constantly pissed off because the person who we live with doesn't fulfill the expectation, but we never actually told them what it was in the first place.
Yeah. We carry resentment of like, well, this person should be able to read my mind and see that I need help.
Know. We've lived together for 15 years. They should just know that I want this done. Well, no, they don't, because it's not in their field of vision, or if it is, they choose to ignore it. And they were never actually sat down and said, you know what, this is one of my boundaries. This is one of my expectations. This is where I reclaim my worth of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a relationship as a couple, then
yeah. Exactly. And I think too, like, as you're saying that, like in partnership, that's one thing, but as also in a role as a parent. And I think like a lot of parents don't actually talk about, because I know for myself, it's not like it was planned, but we don't talk about what our parenting is going to look like and who's taking out what role and who's, you know, what's that going to look like. We kind of like just fall into this. Well, for myself, it fell into this role. I mean, gratefully, Corey was, my partner was always supportive in all the ways, except for when it came to his family, but that's another topic.
That's another podcast.
That's right. So it was very, like, I had a lot of support, and I can't say that I ever felt resentful for him in that way. I think that maybe the only thing I might have been resentful for is because he worked long hours, but we had decided that I would be home with the girls and he would work. So that was my own issue, because I knew, well, in that time I didn't like being alone. So it was my own wound as well, right? Whereas now I'm like, okay, I like my alone time. I like the time and space away. And I think that's another thing too, is like honoring the fact that we aren't meant to be around people all the time. And it's okay to take time away to heal and to rejuvenate and to take care of whatever it is we want to do and what we need.
Mm-hmm. You know, you used a word there that is a really powerful word in rediscovering who you are, and that was the word resentment. When you have resentment towards somebody else, that's because the need's not being met in you that you have never voiced. You have never outwardly said, I need this. And, you know, in order for me to feel whole, feel happy, be this person, then this is what we need to do. Because I know one of the other statements that really ticks me off is happy wife, happy life. That really rubs me up the wrong way, because I usually say, well, what about happy husband, happy wife? You know, this is a two-way street. This isn't just about fulfilling the needs of somebody and just keep her happy, you gotta, it's that ever meandering river down that, you know, and evolving and everything else. So yeah, it's an interesting journey, that's for sure. But when you actually find that level of voice and wholeness within you, which is always evolving, it's not like you just, I reached the end of the road. Yeah, no, you didn't. You're going to keep on evolving, and you're going to keep on uncovering, and you're going to
cyclical, just like nature.
Yeah. So each year, you another notch on the calendar, and now you're going to evolve and grow into that. Now you're going to evolve. So you're never not evolving and growing.
That's right.
And rediscovering you in whatever decade you're in, or however it shows up for you.
If you're in your Saturn return.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I just, like, you keep speaking of the voice, and so it just always brings me back to, like, the voice and womb are connected, right? Like our ability to speak our truth, like our jaw is made up in the same way, like our throat chakra is made up in the same way as our womb. And so if our voice is open and receiving, so is our womb is really open, you know, open to receive, and vice versa. And so just, I mean, obviously that's another conversation, but I always hear when it's like voice and speaking truth, that it's like, it's also comes down to the honoring of being a woman and having a womb, whether you have one or not, is still hold this energetic space of the womb consciousness. And that when we're honoring that wholeness, like that is the feminine way. There's nothing more feminine than our womb and obviously our breasts, but just like honoring that there's so much power and so much wisdom in being a woman. And, you know, there's so much, obviously there's so much that still needs to be healed, but there's also so much beauty and so much power that's out there. And, you know, I think of you, Karen, and what you're bringing and sharing to the world, and how your own healing journey has led you to be able to be of service and do your sacred work in this way, and to be able to support so many other women and finding their wholehearted them, and to be able to support and be with women so that they can reclaim the wholeness of who they are. And I was talking to one of my friends, and I was just talking about my own journey of really my spiritual awakening back in 2012, the full blossoming of it, and how you know, how one person led me to another, led me to you. It was really, I think you were the third person on my spiritual evolution that opened me up to a whole new perspective. I mean, at that time it was light language, and that and this whole connection to source and to the possibility of all that was. And so, you know, we've had our own journeys as we've merged together in our sharings of medicines and coming together to support one another, which I'm always so grateful for. You've brought so much love into my life. You've brought so much perspective and opening my eyes to all of these things. And I just love how our hearts connect and we can share with each other in such a beautiful way.
Me also, Mel. You know, I remember those times sat in the truck speaking light language to each other, and you know, and the beautiful thing that we created when you were living here, and that level of nurturing and wisdom that was brought to the group and to everything else that was being created. And your poetry and everything that you write, you have such an amazing articulate way of putting your emotions down in words. And you know, we share so much with each other, and we share so much with other people around us, that every aspect of who we are brings a level of healing to somebody. And there's no one person that's ever going to heal you. There's only you that is going to heal you. But there are multiples and multiples of people that will transition through your life. Some stay a little longer, some flow in and out. And each one, for the ears to hear and the eyes to see, will bring you closer to the truth of who you are, and will, huge chill, sorry, will bring you back to that state within you that for so long has been lost. And I think the more women can gather with women and hold them in a sacred heart and allow them to express their wounds in a way of safety, and allow them to bear their soul in a way that they may have always felt judged for, that it will bring them back into a place where they can claim wholeness back and rediscover who they are and claim that wholeness, so that they can move forward and be that wisdom for somebody else.
Absolutely. You said that perfectly. And just that reminder that each person that comes into our life is a teacher and has a teaching to give us, whether we like it or not. And, you know, in all of our relationships. And so there's always a gift and always a medicine in each person that comes into our life or leaves our life or is about to enter our life. And you have been a huge gift to my life and continue to be. And I just really honor our relationship and value it so much.
Oh, me also, Mel. I was so excited for today. Now, before we go, I want you to briefly talk about what it is that you're creating, because we're doing another podcast about it. So do you want to briefly share what it is that you are creating with, and what we're going to talk about next with the...
Absolutely. So is this the Wise Women community?
Yeah.
Yeah, so myself and Isabel and a few other women had come together to create what we have called the Wise Women Community. And I can give you the link for that if you want to share that later. And so the Wise Women Community has evolved and has become a really heart-led community of what we hope to be of practitioners, facilitators, of visionaries, of artists, but really a connection or network of women supporting women in the sacred work that they do. And in recognizing that when we do the sacred work for ourselves on our continual journey of healing and evolution, that we create this change, that we create the ability to carry our sacred work out and help to bring this consciousness of the new earth that we are currently in transition of. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that, and we can make it a bigger part of the conversation when Isabel joins.
Yeah.
And yeah, just it is something that has come directly from my heart and from Isabel's heart, and is just really the truest expression of how and vision of how we see women coming together and being the more beautiful world that we know our hearts is possible.
Mm-hmm. Because when women come together and stand in one voice, they move mountains.
Mm-hmm. I love surrounded in mountains, so there's going to be a lot of movement.
Well, Mel, I want to thank you again. I can't wait for the next conversation, and you and I need to do this again more often, because I love the conversations that you and I have and how deep they go and how they meander in different places. And you know, you have so much wisdom to share from your own personal journey and from all the experiences that you have had in this life, that you have now got to a point of healing those wounds and are in a position to be able to share them and tap into that level of wisdom that perhaps somebody else is going through currently that doesn't quite see that wisdom yet. So I'd love to be able to do more of these conversations with you and share that level of understanding and wisdom as we all grow. Every single one of us, there's not one single person on this planet that you can hold as a guru, because every single one of us are doing our own sacred journey. Every single one of us hold a little bit of our own truth that we can share as wisdom to someone else. So if you put somebody on a pedestal, take them off, put them at eye level with you, because when you know what they know, you know the same thing. And then it just becomes a choice on whether you act upon it or don't. But nobody is above you. So
everything is inside of you.
Everything
you are your own guru.
Exactly. When we tap into that inner wisdom, when you truly tap into that wisdom and you connect into that intuition and you get those hits and you know that you're on a sacred path of that inner journey, you listen to that internal guidance. And you know, people used to call it sixth sense. It's an internal guidance system that it's the best GPS you'll ever have.
Absolutely. And our experiences is what allow for wisdom to blossom, right? It's in our experiences. And I would love to be able to continue this, because I believe, you know, we all have wisdom to share. And I love, like you were saying, how ours kind of flows and goes in and out into all these different places and then comes back together. And we both have so much wisdom to share. And, you know, if one thing is said that resonates with somebody, then that's an opening of the lotus or of the blossoming of a flower for them to receive and to digest. And so I would love to continue doing this. I mean, initially that's what we wanted to create.
Yeah.
When we first began Rebels Compass, was really having people come together and share their stories, their sacred work, you know, the tools that they needed or that they used that helped to support them. And so I still feel that's so important, and I still love that we can bring that together. So I would definitely love to keep that up.
Oh, me too. Me too. Okay, that sounds like a plan. Well, tonight I want to say thank you, Mel, for joining me and for sharing your wisdom. And I cannot wait to get to you and Isabel on again next week, is it?
Yes.
For everybody out there listening to this podcast, please share it, because you never know who needs to hear something or all of what was said today. Perhaps they've just started their own sacred journey and are healing their own internal wounds. And there is something that might hit home that is that shining light for them to continue on in healing that aspect of themselves and returning to wholeness and becoming wholeheartedly themselves, where they don't seek someone else to fill them up. They fill their own cup. So have an amazing day. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Be good to yourselves, and thank you, Mel. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
so much.
I appreciate it.
Now, everybody.
Bye.